Today we're going to talk a little bit about stimulus control procedures, stimulus shaping and stimulus fading. The article that I've given you is at the top of the slide that you see in front of you. And I picked this article, and the reason that I picked it was it uses a commonly applied low-tech augmentative communication system, picture exchange communication system, that you frequently see being used in public schools with individuals who have significant speech difficulty. This article also demonstrates the use of stimulus control procedures, which is what we're talking about today. And it was accomplished using a single participant experimental design. And that's good, which means that if you're a teacher in the classroom, you would actually have an opportunity to collect evidence-based data on this procedure. I've outlined in the next series of slides, which we won't spend a lot of time on, but which you can take a look at, the steps of the picture exchange communication system, which I'll refer to as PECS, which was developed by Bondi and Frost in the mid-1990s. The goal of the program is to teach the learner to select a symbol from an array of symbols and basically deliver it to a listener. So children with autism spectrum disorders, for whom those individuals are some of the major users of this particular technique, often they have difficulty finding a listener to communicate with. So this procedure builds into the procedure selecting a symbol, finding a listener, taking the symbol to the listener. So that's really the unique aspect of picture exchange communication systems as a low-tech communication system. So I'm going to go through, there are 6 phases of PECS that you see, and it really begins around the 3rd phase of PECS, which you'll see in the study, where we begin to get into engaging in discriminations. And what I want to spend just a moment doing is to differentiate between a simple discrimination and a more involved conditional discrimination. So simple discriminations could be described as being able to discriminate between several choices that are being made available at the same time. So here I have a picture of a banana, a pear, and looks like a Labrador Retriever. So in a simple discrimination task, I would be interested in teaching the learner to select a single symbol. Let's say, for example, it was the lab. Across teaching opportunities, these same 3 items would be made available. They would be placed in randomized positions across teaching opportunities, but the learner's job would be to continue to select the lab. If he can continue to select the lab, he's engaging in a simple discrimination because we know he can differentiate the lab from those other 2 events. And what tells him he should take the choose the lab, or what serves as his instructional cue, it's basically the reinforcement that he would get contingent on selecting the lab. So the reinforcer across opportunities really serves as his instructional cue. In the article that you're going to read, they talk about a lot of early communication studies stopping at the point of simple discrimination. But to really gain full use over an augmentative communication system, an aided communication system, requires that an individual engage in a conditional discrimination. So the next 2 slides depict what would happen in a conditional discrimination. On the first teaching opportunity, I have 2 choices available for the learner, the teddy bear and the ball. And you see right above the teddy bear and the ball, there's a duplicate ball. This is often referred to in the literature as identity matching to sample. And the learner's job is to use that ball at the top of the slide, which is often referred to as the sample, to use that ball as the instructional cue to tell the learner which of the 2 choices they should take. On other opportunities, the corresponding object, in this case the teddy bear, becomes the sample, and I still have the 2 choices out, But notice it's important to randomize the choices across teaching opportunities when I'm instructing the learner. So if the learner is capable of selecting the bear when the bear serves as the sample and capable of selecting the ball when it serves as the sample, the learner is beginning to engage in a conditional discrimination. That's what we do when we communicate. So an individual, if you're a preschooler, you see a teddy bear out there that you'd like to get your hands on, but you can't get your hands on it. So you might end up requesting that using a picture exchange communication system. So the teddy bear in the real environment serves as your sample, and the choice symbols in your communication array serve as the choices. So when you get to phase 3 of PECS and beyond, you're engaging in clearly a conditional discrimination if you're being successful in the program. So to use a communication board, to use an aided communication system, such as is described in the article that you're reading, you really need to learn to engage in a conditional discrimination. My examples here are identity matching, where the sample is exactly the same as the choices. But of course, when you're using an augmentative communication system, a communication board, you're also having to engage in non-identity matching, because usually you're seeing a real object in the environment which serves as your sample or instructional cue, and you're seeing usually pictures or photographs or black and white line drawings as your choices. And that's what makes it a non-identical match. Well, at the outset of our presentation, we started talking about stimulus control procedures, which involve stimulus fading and stimulus shaping, which some people refer to as stimulus building. So if you take a quick look at stimulus building, gradually the configuration of a stimulus is altered by adding elements until a new stimulus is formed. And often it's referred to in the literature somewhat incorrectly as stimulus fading, but you're building a distractor. In the article that you read, okay, you're going to find that they used what they refer to as distractors. And across opportunities, if I started out with the target symbol the learner was to select, that would be the lab in our first example. That's the symbol to select. To make the conditional discrimination easy for the learner, we might pair that colored line drawing of a Labrador Retriever with an absolutely blank white symbol. So the learner does have to make a choice, right? But the choice is pretty simple. It's between nothing versus a Labrador Retriever. So when you're reading the article, take careful note to look at how they're beginning to build the stimulus array for the learner, which we refer to as stimulus building or stimulus shaping. Here's an example. So in this particular frame, snack is the target symbol that the learner is going to be taught to select. Why? Because he really likes snacks. He's not particularly interested in the couch, so I'm using the couch as the distractor. So initially, when the learner has two symbols in front of him, snack and a blank card, there's nothing particularly interesting about a blank card. He's going to get reinforced with a snack if he selects the snack symbol. Across opportunities, that snack symbol is going to be randomized. Sometimes it's on the right, sometimes it's on the left, so that I know he's not just picking a position and he's really having to look for the symbol. Well, you can see what's happening across trials. In this particular example, I'm building the distractor so that it will increasingly compete with the target symbol. That makes the discrimination across opportunities more challenging for the learner. So frequently, when I'm introducing a communication board with a learner, I'm building the distractor to make the discrimination more challenging. Other ways to build the distractors are to increase the number of symbols that are in the communication array while the learner's continuing to be able to make a correct selection. They refer to it as introducing a distractor, and I've placed a slide in this packet describing an example of what that would look like for you. Well, the other option that we have available is referred to as stimulus fading. And in stimulus fading, gradually the configuration of a stimulus is altered by removing elements until a new stimulus is formed, which continues to exert control over the learner selecting that symbol. Here's my example. So if I'm working with a little kid and initially he's interested in selecting single-serve bags of Fritos from the grocery store, and he's interested in doing that over other chips that come in bags, he may be able already to discriminate a Cheetos bag from a bag of another brand of potato chip. If so, that would be great, and initially I could use the bag itself. You can see how I'm engaging in stimulus fading here by gradually cutting down the size of the bag and gradually continuing to crop it until I'm left with just the Fritos logo, which I eventually turn into a black and white symbol for portability so that I can easily place it on a communication display. Now, the goal of both stimulus building and stimulus fading is to reduce error responses that the learner emits. It's okay to have some errors, but generally we like to keep a learner successful at a level of 70 to 80% or higher when they're learning a discrimination, particularly if they have moderate or severe developmental disabilities. So the primary advantage that we have for the learner, it very gradually introduces increasing difficulty of a task, and by doing that we're able to keep them really, really successful, and we're able to minimize frustration. So also with learners who engage in challenging behavior, this can be a very useful technique for us. Two other warnings here: avoid position bias when we're teaching a discrimination, conditional discrimination, such as is being done in the article that you'll be reading. Position bias here is our enemy. So if I fail to move symbols around in different positions, the learner may simply learn to select a particular spot. This is particularly a problem when we're engaging in just a simple discrimination with the learner. So moving those things around kind of ensures that the learner is searching for the target symbol. Item bias can also be a challenge. In the first number of steps in the PECS program, you're basically teaching a learner to select something that he wants. When you introduce that second item, sometimes the learner gets into item bias. Let's suppose that for me, we picked a Snicker bar because that's my favorite thing, and that was the first symbol that you taught me. Because I like Snicker bars better than anything else in the world, I may form an item bias for that. So no matter what other symbol you pair with that, I'm still going to try to select the Snickers symbol. There are ways to get learners out of item bias responses in terms of limiting reinforcers that are available for periods of time while I'm working on an alternative symbol. But that'll probably be for another week for us to talk about. Thanks.